Yeah. Hello, and welcome to Tech Talk number 16. Today is June 10th, and I've got a very special guest. I've got Sam Friedman. He is from one of Jaspersoft's most important partners, implementation partners, Column Technologies. So it's a pleasure to have you, Sam, on the show. The topic today is dynamically loading subreports. So Sam's going to take us through a technique for creating sort of dynamic dashboards that bring in KPIs based on user selections. It's a very cool technique. I've used Jaspersoft for years, and I hadn't really thought of doing something like this. So it's very creative. This show will require for you to follow along. Probably require a pretty good grasp of Jaspersoft technology. So if you're a beginner, just getting into the technology, I'd say this is probably not for you. If you're a little bit more advanced, then you're really gonna love this because it's a great creative use of subreports. So with that, Sam, I'll hand it over to you, and you can take us through your demonstration.
Thanks, Ernesto. So I've outlined the approach for dynamic subreports, and what I'd like to do is cover the business case, so why someone might be interested in using this technique, and then what approach they might take to implement it. And then I will demonstrate through not just screenshots, but I'll open up iReport and Jasper Report Server and show you how this works, how users would interact with it, and how a developer would create it. And then lastly, we can talk about some of the implications of using this technique, some of the features that you could use that maybe we haven't demonstrated, or advanced things that you could do to extend the functional capabilities. So the premise or the scenario of why someone might use it could probably be summed up with this fictitious use case. So in my demonstration, I've used the Food Mart data source, the sample Food Mart data, so I'll stick with that. So Food Mart's an international chain of supermarkets, and the Human Resources Department, the Business Intelligence Department, they've decided to create a standard list of key performance indicators to be used across all departments. And we want to enable managers to select which key performance indicators they want to use to manage their departments. However, we expect to find that even with a standard list of key performance indicators, not all managers will be interested in the exact same ones. And those might be for all kinds of reasons, different management styles, different policies. Again, it's an international company, so maybe different regions or geographies have different factors that would influence the need for a different KPI. So we have lots of different managers to satisfy with similar but perhaps varying requirements. What are the different approaches we could take to make everyone happy? So one is we could talk to each of the individual managers and review the standard KPIs with them and design a report for each specific manager. That would probably be very effective, but not very efficient, because we'd end up with as many reports as we had managers, and in a global company that could be a lot. The second technique would be assuming that not every single manager had a completely mutually exclusive set of KPIs, that lots of managers would be interested in similar KPIs. We could identify those overlapping requirements and create a fewer number of reports. So managers A and B want the exact same KPIs. We create one report for those two managers. And then managers C and D require or are interested in another common set of KPIs. We create a second report for those two managers and so forth, hoping and assuming that lots of managers have similar KPIs. So we'd still end up with many reports, but probably not as many as in solution A. And then the last approach we could consider is, what if we separate what changes from what doesn't change and create KPI reports for individual KPIs, and then one master report where the user or individual managers can choose which KPIs appear on their report. And not surprisingly, we're going to go with option C. And the reason is With this approach, there'll only be one report to maintain, one main report. Um, and separately, things that change a lot, like which KPIs we offer and changing KPIs, can all be managed as individual reports. So again, one report of the things that change are managed individually. Um, if we need to make a change to any one KPI, then we can do that without changing any of the other reports. And implementing this as a Jasper report lets us take advantage of all the standard reporting capabilities, like users can save parameters, users can export reports to share offline, or leverage report automation, scheduling, and email distribution. So for option C, this is what we would present. So this is a sample of what the finished product would look like, and here's a screenshot. But let me switch into Jaspersoft, and here's an example of how that report would work. So logged in as a user, one of the department managers. Let's say I manage the human resources department. I would select that department and which KPIs I'm interested. Perhaps I'm interested in the education level, the gender, and the salary of employees in my department. Click apply, and my KPI report will update to show those 3 KPIs for that one department. Another user could log in and say, I'm responsible for marketing and finance and accounting, and I'm interested in these other 3 KPIs, and click apply. And they'll see the different set of KPIs that were chosen for these 2 different departments, marketing and finance and accounting. So any permutation of these would be supported, whether it's different combinations of departments and KPIs, but still only one report. So
That's really nice. Very nice. I'm wondering about the saved values as well. So if I suppose when you do have those commonly used ones, would you be able to hit that save button to save combinations of?
yeah, that's the exact intention. So if I log in and look at this report every day as the manager of these 3 departments, it might become tedious for me to reset these values every time. It would be nice if I could select them from a drop-down list. So um, users can select their KPIs, click the save button, and then create their favorite combination of KPIs and access them with one click instead of resetting individual values each time. And this is not specific, or this is not designed for this report. This is a standard feature of Jaspersoft that we're leveraging in this report. So no extra work on our part. Jaspersoft made this part easy.
Great.
All right, so that's the summary or the demonstration of the user scenario for this report. So in my demonstration, just to let you know what you're looking at, I'm demonstrating this on Jaspersoft Business Intelligence Suite Professional 5.0.1, but this was initially designed in 4.7 and it works in 5.1. So this technique can be used across many different versions. I'm leveraging the capabilities in Jasper Report Server and iReport, and in my demonstration, I'm using the Food Mart sample data. So if you install Jaspersoft in your environment and you want to try this technique, just make sure you include the Food Mart sample data. And the approach I took to design this is, in step 1, I develop each of the individual KPI catalog subreports. So if I had a KPI for gender, I would design that here. If I had a KPI for management position, I would design that here. If I had another KPI for salary, etc., all the KPIs I would design here in step 1. In step 2, I design my main KPI report. That's where all of the other KPI reports appear. In step 3, I create my input controls, and then I'm done. After step 3, the only thing left to do is ongoing maintenance or administration of the solution. So now I'll just walk through some of the steps and demonstrate how I do each of these things. So in creating each of the individual catalog subreports, let me open iReport, and I've got a couple open right now. So here's my education KPI, and it will be used as a subreport, but in Jaspersoft, subreports are really not very different from reports. The only difference is in some of the design decisions you make. So, for example, in this education report, KPI education report, you'll see my page width and height is much smaller than a US letter or A4 or other printable documents. Most reports are designed to fit on a printed page, but this one is designed to be very, very, very small, only 376 by 225 pixels. And if I look at another example of one of my KPI reports, here I have KPI position, you'll see that the page width and height are exactly the same. And this is one area where you're going to be consistent across all your KPI catalog reports. The other area where you'll be consistent is on the parameters.
Sorry, one thing
So
before you move off
yeah,
size. It looks like you've removed the report margins. I don't know if you want to just quickly point out the shortcut to do that from the main report element. Like if you click on the right click on the main report element, you can quickly remove margins. Um,
yep. So because these will be used as subreports and embedded in a larger report, I don't need a lot of the decoration, if you will, that goes on a normal report. So I don't need things like uh, page headers, page footers. I don't need a lot of the space left by margins, top or even the side margins. I've left a few pixels here in the top and bottom just to add some spacing on the report. But this is a design decision that you'll make, and that this enables you by using no margins or very small margins, enables you to use the real estate in the main report very effectively.
Great.
So that's a very good point. Thanks for bringing that up. So aside from having a small page size, you're not going to use a lot of blank space around the margins or the sides of your report. You're not going to use all of the bands. You'll see I'm only using the title band and the summary band. And then the other part that's consistent across all the KPI reports will be the parameters. So in this example, managers are choosing which department they're interested in. So I have a department parameter that maps to the department table in the Food Mart sample data. And the type is a collection because I'm allowing users to select multiple departments. Again, if I look at this is a position KPI. If I look at the education KPI and expand parameters, I'll see the exact same parameter. The department description list, which is the name of the parameter, and it's a collection because we can select multiple ones. So that's step one. I'm going to design as many of these as I need. I think in my demonstration I have about 6 of them. But there's no reason why you couldn't create twice as many or 10 times as many. So that's step one. In step two, we're going to design our main KPI report, and that's the main report on which all the sub-reports appear. But in order to do that, we're going to create a custom table that the main report's going to query. And that table is going to be the list of KPIs. So here's a very simple KPI table. Only 2 columns. The first column is the name of the KPI, and this is something that you would present to a business user. So a business recognizable name for a KPI. Gender, education, position, these are the ones I used on my report. And in the second column is the URI, which is short for Uniform Resource Indicator. This is the location in the Jasper report server repository where these KPI reports or KPI catalog subreports appear. So the REPO syntax indicates that this is somewhere inside the Jasper report server repository. And again, for
Will you
every,
show us later in the demo how to extract the URI? Uh, there's
yeah,
yeah, you don't have to do it now, just later when you get back
yeah,
to the demo.
absolutely. So this is the table we're going to create, and we're going to provide the samples that I used, or the sample code and scripts that I used to create my demonstration. So you can see the SQL that I used to create this table in the the database that comes with Jaspersoft server in the Postgres database. So a simple database create statement can be used to create this table, and then a series of inserts to fill this up. So that's what the table would look like. Here's what the report would look like. So in my demonstration, it's really simple. I only have a title band and a detail band. And in the detail band, I have a subreport element. Before I go into the subreport element, let me show you the query. The query for this report is the custom table I created. So I'm querying a table that lists all of the KPIs that are available. And there's a parameter where I only pick the KPIs that the user selected, which means there's a parameter on this report. If I expand parameters, you'll see KPI list. And this enables us to have a multi-select so that the user can pick however many KPIs they want to see. And we use that in the where clause of the query of this report. We also have another parameter that should look familiar. This is the same department name parameter that appears on all of the KPI catalog subreports. So it's the department name, and it's a collection, because again, we're letting users select as many departments as they want. That should all be pretty straightforward. Next is the subreport element itself. So typically, when we design reports with subreports, if we look at the subreport expression, we have a static string that identifies the location of the subreport somewhere in the repository. It'd be double quoted, and it would probably start with REPO and whatever location the report is stored in the repository. In this case, we're dynamically looking up the subreport expression based on this parameter value right here. So here we let users specify however many and whichever KPIs they wanted from a list of KPIs in our custom table. And here in our subreport expression, which is in the detail band of our report, for every KPI they selected, we're going to show a new subreport. Now you may have noticed I made use of columns. And the only reason I use columns here is so I can show two KPIs side by side on every row and have it look like a typical dashboard in a grid format. But there's no reason why I needed to use columns. If I wanted to have my KPIs use the full width of the page, I would have just foregone using columns and had my KPI catalog subreports be the full page width. But in this case, I wanted a lot of small, compact visualizations. So I made 2 KPIs per row, and I made use of columns in the detail band.
Very nice. So it definitely looks like you had to plan ahead when you're thinking about sizing. Not to get back to that too much, but it looks like the holes that you made here for the sub reports, fit very nicely with the KPIs that you made. So that it seemed like you'll have to decide early on in the project how big you want each KPI to be if you want to use this technique. Meaning that one KPI can't be bigger than another and that kind of thing, unless there's ways to maybe include some in like a summary band or something like that later on.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So when I designed this, I took out a piece of scrap paper and I counted out the number of pixels wide on it. Well, I didn't count, but I wrote down the number of pixels wide on the page. And I just did a number of subtractions. I subtracted my margins, and then I came up with the width of each KPI.
Very cool. And then can you
And
show how the parameter passing works? So
sure.
you're asking for a department description for each KPI. So that's an interesting bit there as well.
Yep. So here on the main report, I'm soliciting the list of department names from the user, but I want to pass those into each of the subreports as well. So if I now select on my subreport element, scroll down in the properties to parameters, I have one parameter defined. And here I'm taking the parameter from my parent report and I'm passing it in to the department, to the same named parameter on each of my KPI catalog subreports. So in my sample, I only have one business parameter that I'm passing in. That's a department name. But later on, we'll talk about ways to extend the capabilities of this. At some point, you may want to pass in multiple parameters to the subreports, like date ranges or other things. Okay, so going back to our approach, we've discussed our KPI catalog subreports, design as many as you need. We went on to design our main KPI main report, which started off with a custom table that lists all of the names of our KPIs and the repository location of those KPIs. Once we had that table, we were able to design the main or KPI main report. And lastly, define some input controls. So this is usable. So there are only two input controls that we needed for this sample. One's for the department list, and the second one is for the KPI, the list of KPIs. So going back to Jaspersoft server, here's my KPI main report. I'll right click on it, choose edit, controls and resources, and here are my two KPIs. So the first one prompts users to select one or more department, and the second one prompts users to select one or more KPI. They're both multi-select queries. So the first one queries the department table in the Food Mart database with a multi-select query. The second one queries our custom table. So I'll just click through until I get to the query. Again, multi-select. And here's the query. So I'm selecting both of the columns in my table, the name and the URI. Again, name's the business-friendly term, URI is the location, from my custom table, my KPI catalog. And I prompt the user, or I show the user the name of the KPI, and that's what I pass in as my value as well. And I use the name as both the lookup into the table to find the URI, as well as what's recognizable to the user.
Quick question there, Sam.
Yeah.
In your KPI report, I actually would have expected to see some sub-reports loaded in as resources there. But I guess oh, right, right. So the URIs were absolute paths to another element, but they might
Well,
as they could have been within the same report unit, I suppose, right?
that's exactly right. So um, when I designed this demonstration, I chose to make the subreports standalone resources that could be used in Jaspersoft for across many reports or even dashboards and other things. They don't have to be resources of the report.
Okay, but like what you're showing here, KPI headcount, the type is a report there. I thought sub-reports had to be JRXML, so that I guess I'm a little bit confused as to how they're being included.
These are also these first six items right here, going
Yeah.
from KPI education to KPI salary. These are all JRXML files. These are all my reports, all my KPI catalog subreports, which are in themselves standalone reports.
Oh, I wasn't aware you could reference those in a sub-report expression. Okay, okay.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, okay. Yeah, because you can upload raw JRXMLs, I suppose. And so there's I guess a few different ways to do it. The way you did it, upload raw JRXMLs into the repo or upload JRXMLs into the report unit. All right.
Yeah,
Uh,
so
cool.
the advantage of doing it this way, while both would have worked, the advantage of doing it this way is these could be standalone reports if I wanted them to be. While they're designed to fit inside the KPI main report, which is called my KPI report right here.
Right.
There may be scenarios where I want to use them as standalone reports, maybe embed them in another application or a portal, perhaps.
Okay, okay, so a lot of reusability there. So now I
Exactly.
am very curious as to how you can actually get the URI then, because I didn't even know that you could do that, which is very cool that you can reference a report unit for a sub-report.
Yep. So the one of the ways that I found um, to do it is in iReport, go to the repository navigator, find the resource. So let's say it's this report right here, my KPI education report. Right click on the JRXML for that report, choose properties, and here's the URL, the parent folder plus the ID.
Okay, and it looks like it just adds underscore JXML to it.
Yeah, the
That's
Jaspersoft naming convention adds underscore files to
okay.
the repository folder names.
That's nice.
Yep.
Perfect.
Okay. So we've gone through all three steps to create the report. The one thing that I didn't demonstrate was publishing the report, but that follows standard procedures. I didn't do anything special there, aside from make these KPI catalog sub-reports standalone reports. And then the next step is day-to-day administration or ongoing maintenance or enhancements of what we just created. So that may involve things like adding new KPI catalog sub-reports. You know, 30 days later, 90 days later, we may have requirements to add new KPIs, or we may have learned something that leads us to change the calculation on an existing KPI. In either scenario, all we have to do is go back in iReport, open our KPI catalog subreports, make changes and save them. We would not need to go back and make changes to the main report or anything users may have saved. Um, this approach has made our changes very, very discrete and atomic. All right, so I've shown you the table. This is the custom table that we created. Some of the features that I didn't demonstrate but are default in Jasper Report Server that we could have leveraged are any of the automation and scheduling features. So the KPI report can have a scheduled job created for it, and it can be archived onto server periodically or distributed as a PDF file via email. Users can save their parameters, and we walk through that a little bit. So if I manage the same 3 departments and I'm always interested in the same 6 KPIs, I can save those parameter selections or that parameter configuration and access them with a single click instead of having to reselect them in a tedious manner every time. I can export this report in any of the formats that Jasper Report Server supports, and I can embed it in another application. So those are all things that are there by default, just having implemented it this way. I may want to expand the capabilities at some point by adding new KPIs, and that would just entail creating brand new reports in that same small form factor with small margins, using the same parameters, and adding them to my KPI table, my custom KPI table. I may add new parameters. So right now in this demonstration, I only have the department name, but I may add things like date ranges or other categories, maybe product categorization or geography, things like that. And then lastly, I may enhance the whole KPI catalog by doing things like creating categories of KPIs. So if at some point this became a solution used across many different business lines, not just human resources, but manufacturing, accounting, purchasing, finance, I may have too many KPIs to easily navigate from a single list and identify from a single list. I may create categories of KPIs and have my HR categories and my finance categories, etc. I also might apply permissions. So I don't necessarily want every user in my organization to see the salary key performance indicator or the education key performance indicator for other employees. So I could add additional columns to my table and ensure that only certain users see those KPIs. And then lastly, I could apply this exact same technique to other Jaspersoft documents like dashboards. And in fact, in our customer customer solutions, this is typically the approach we take. So the report is really the best way to demonstrate and explain, and is the fundamental concept of this technique. But we could take this report and add it to dashboards, and I'll show you a couple demonstration of that. So here's one example where we've added an extra column to our custom table to handle security. So maybe all employees can see the gender and the position KPIs, but only managers can see the education KPI. And you would accommodate this third column in your query on the KPI main report. And here's an example of using this same technique on a dashboard. So just like in our report approach, we only wanted one report to meet the needs of lots of different types of users. In this case, I have one dashboard where we let individual users pick which KPI appears on the dashboard. So we're always showing 3 KPIs on this dashboard, but if you look below each visualization, you'll see there's a drop-down menu, and the user can select which KPIs appear on their dashboard. And instead of passing in a single parameter, like the department name, we can pass in as many parameters as our subreports can handle.
So this is an actual dashboard from one of your customers, if I understand correctly, right?
That's exactly correct. So this customer had lots of different users with very similar, but not exactly similar requirements. And we were faced with a scenario where we almost went down the path of creating lots of different variations of the dashboard to satisfy the needs of different users. This technique enabled us to create a single dashboard that users can customize to their own requirements without having to rebuild and manage lots of different dashboards.
Yeah, I'd say like for maintainability, this is great. It's really good. And interactivity. I mean, as far as the end user being able to just, choose from this huge wealth of data, but also doing it like in a pretty easy way. I like it. I like it a lot.
Very good. Yeah, we found that our customers are very happy with this approach. So we went over the business scenario, and I demonstrated the key factors and attributes of the KPI catalog subreports. Then I showed you a very simple KPI catalog subreport table. Again, it only has 2 columns, the name of the KPI and the URI, or where it's stored in the repository. Then I demonstrated the design of the main, or the KPI main report. In this case, I used columns so I could show KPIs side by side, but that was an optional design choice that I took. I could have had 1 KPI per row. And the query on that main report is against that custom KPI catalog subreport table. Then we designed 2 input controls, one to choose the department name or which department names, and the second to choose which KPIs appear on the report. They're both multi-select queries. And then lastly, we discussed ways to extend the functionality, either by leveraging default features in Jaspersoft, like saving parameters, exporting, automating your reports with email distribution archiving, or adding new things like subreports for your KPIs if you have too many to find in one list, or adding permissions. Another thing you might want to do in extending is, if you're doing a lot of maintenance work on the KPI table, you may want to create a front-end application to manage that table instead of having to write direct SQL to insert values or change values. And that's it. That's it for the dynamic subreport explanation. So
Great.
my name is Sam Friedman. I'm the Business Intelligence Practice Manager for Column Technologies. I'm more than happy to answer questions about this approach or other types of similar solutions. And Ernesto, you've been a terrific host. Thank you very much.
No, thanks to you for coming on and all the work you've put into this. My understanding too is that Column teaches this as a class, as a sort of mini classroom. So if there's anybody interested in that and having a live kind of training with Sam and his team, let him know by email. I'm sure he'll be happy to set that up. So with that, thanks again, and I hope to have you on again soon.
Thank you.
Bye.